Imagine waking up tomorrow, only to realize that every problem in your life is still waiting for you. The deadlines haven't disappeared. Your fears are still there. People continue to misunderstand you, and the future remains just as uncertain as ever. Yet something has changed. For the first time in a long time, your mind is completely at peace. Not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. Almost 2,000 years ago, the most powerful man on Earth wrestled with the very same fears, doubts, and uncertainties that we face today. The wisdom he discovered would go on to change millions of lives. Yet the book that made him immortal was never intended to be published. It wasn't written to impress anyone. It wasn't written to become a bestseller. It wasn't even written for an audience. Late at night, after exhausting days filled with war, political conflict, and personal tragedy, Marcus Aurelius opened a notebook and wrote reminders to himself. Simple thoughts, honest reflections, quiet conversations with his own mind. He was not trying to teach the world. He was trying to teach himself how to become a better human being. Those private notes eventually became Meditations, a book that has survived for nearly 2,000 years and continues to inspire leaders, entrepreneurs, athletes, soldiers, psychologists, and millions of ordinary people searching for peace in an increasingly chaotic world. What makes this remarkable is that Marcus Aurelius wasn't promising wealth, fame, or happiness. Instead, he offered something far more valuable: the ability to remain steady when everything around you is uncertain. Because life has always been unpredictable. People disappoint us, plans fail, success fades, loved ones leave. Time keeps moving. These are not modern problems. They are human problems. And perhaps that is why Meditations still feels astonishingly relevant today. This isn't a book about escaping reality. It's about learning how to face reality with courage. It's about discovering that true strength doesn't come from controlling the world around you. It comes from mastering the world within you. Over the next few chapters, we'll explore the timeless lessons hidden inside Marcus Aurelius's private journal. These ideas have endured wars, empires, revolutions, and centuries of change because they speak to something permanent in human nature. By the end of this journey, you may not see your problems differently because they have changed. You may see them differently because you have. Let's begin. Who is Marcus Aurelius? Before we can understand the wisdom contained in Meditations, we must first understand the man who wrote it. History remembers Marcus Aurelius as one of the greatest emperors of ancient Rome, but titles alone cannot explain why his words continue to inspire millions of people nearly 2,000 years later. Marcus Aurelius was born in 121 AD into a respected Roman family. From an early age, those around him noticed something unusual. While many children were drawn to luxury, entertainment, and comfort, Marcus preferred simplicity. He was fascinated by learning and deeply interested in philosophy. One teacher introduced him to Stoicism, a school of philosophy that taught a powerful idea. You cannot control everything that happens to you, but you can always control how you respond. That lesson would become the foundation of his entire life. As Marcus grew older, fate placed enormous responsibilities on his shoulders. He was chosen to become the future emperor of Rome, the most powerful position in the known world. For many people, unlimited power would have become a path toward pride, greed, and corruption. Imagine carrying the responsibility for millions of lives while grieving your own loved ones. Imagine making decisions that could determine the future of an empire while living with uncertainty every single day. This was the reality Marcus Aurelius faced. Yet instead of allowing hardship to harden his heart, he turned inward. During military campaigns, often living in cold frontier camps far from the luxury of Rome, he would write short reflections to himself. These writings were never speeches. They were never political statements. They were reminders. Reminders to stay patient. Reminders to remain humble. Reminders to control his anger. Reminders to accept what he could not change. In many ways, Marcus Aurelius was fighting two battles at the same time. One was against enemies outside the empire. The other was against fear, ego, frustration, and weakness within himself. He believed that the second battle was far more important, because no matter how powerful a person becomes, they remain a prisoner if they cannot govern their own mind. That is what makes Marcus Aurelius so different from many historical rulers. He did not write about conquering nations. He wrote about conquering himself. He did not believe greatness came from wealth or status. He believed greatness came from character. Nearly every page of Meditations reflects this belief. Again and again, Marcus reminds himself that fame is temporary. Power is temporary. Even life itself is temporary. The only thing that truly belongs to us is the way we choose to think, act, and respond. That idea is as relevant today as it was in ancient Rome. We may never lead an empire, but every day we are asked to lead something just as important: our own minds. And that is exactly where Meditations begins. But Marcus viewed power differently. To him, leadership was not a privilege, it was a duty. In 161 AD, Marcus Aurelius became Emperor of Rome. His reign was anything but peaceful. The empire was constantly threatened by wars along its borders. Deadly diseases spread across the population. Political conspiracies emerged inside the government. Economic difficulties challenged the stability of the empire. Even within his own family, Marcus experienced profound personal loss, as several of his children died at a young age. What is Meditations? Most books are written with a reader in mind. Authors carefully organize their ideas, polish their words, and hope their work will reach as many people as possible. Meditations is completely different. Marcus Aurelius never intended anyone else to read it. There was no publisher, no audience, no desire for fame. The book was simply a private journal, a place where an emperor spoke honestly to himself. He wrote during military campaigns, often while living in temporary camps far from Rome. After long days spent leading armies, resolving political disputes, and carrying the weight of an empire, he would sit alone and write. Not about victories, not about glory, but about becoming a better person. In many ways, Meditations is a conversation between Marcus Aurelius and his own mind. Whenever he felt anger rising, he reminded himself to remain calm. Whenever he became frustrated by difficult people, he reminded himself that every human being acts according to what they believe is right. Whenever fear of the future appeared, he reminded himself that the present moment was the only thing truly within his control. This honesty is what makes the book so powerful. Marcus never pretends to be perfect. He doesn't present himself as a wise man who has conquered every weakness. Instead, he repeatedly admits that he must keep practicing. Again and again, he encourages himself to be more patient, more disciplined, more grateful, more compassionate. That is why Meditations feels surprisingly modern. When you read it, it doesn't feel like a lecture from a distant emperor. It feels like listening to someone who struggles with the same emotions we experience today: stress, anxiety, anger, disappointment, self-doubt. The world around us has changed dramatically over the last 2,000 years. We have smartphones instead of scrolls, cars instead of horses, the internet instead of handwritten letters. But human nature has remained remarkably similar. We still worry about what others think. We still become frustrated when life doesn't go according to plan. We still fear failure. We still postpone what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius understood something timeless. Technology changes. Empires rise and fall. Societies evolve. But the human mind continues to wrestle with the same questions. Not because it tells people how to become rich or famous, but because it teaches something far more valuable: how to remain steady when life refuses to cooperate. As we begin exploring its lessons, remember one important fact. Marcus Aurelius wasn't writing these words because he had already mastered life. He was writing them because he was still learning. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. No matter who you are, no matter how successful you become, the work of improving yourself never truly ends. The journey begins with a simple realization. You cannot control everything that happens to you, but you can always choose how you respond. That is the foundation of Stoicism, and it is the first great lesson of meditations. Lesson 1. Control what you can. Imagine you're stuck in traffic on your way to an important meeting. The cars aren't moving, the minutes keep passing. You glance at the clock again and again, feeling your heart race. You become angry. You complain. You blame the drivers, the city, the weather, anything that seems responsible for your situation. But despite all that frustration, one simple fact remains: the traffic doesn't move any faster. This is the first lesson Marcus Aurelius wanted himself to remember. Much of our suffering comes from trying to control things that were never ours to control. The weather, other people's opinions, the past, the future, luck, unexpected setbacks. No amount of worrying can rewrite yesterday. No amount of anger can force someone else to behave the way we want. And no amount of fear can guarantee that tomorrow will unfold exactly as we imagine. Yet many of us spend our lives fighting battles that can never be won. Marcus Aurelius realized that this constant struggle steals something precious from us: our peace of mind. Again and again, he reminded himself that the only true power any person possesses lies within. Not over events, not over other people, but over their own thoughts, choices, and actions. This idea may sound simple, but living it is one of the greatest challenges of all. Think about how often a single comment from another person changes your entire day. A stranger criticizes you online. A coworker ignores your effort. A friend forgets to reply to your message. Suddenly, your happiness depends on someone else's behavior. Marcus Aurelius would ask a different question. Why give another person that much power over your mind? If someone speaks unfairly about you, you still control whether you respond with anger or patience. If life presents an obstacle, you still control whether you face it with courage or self-pity. If you fail, you still control whether you learn from it or allow it to define you. This doesn't mean pretending that pain doesn't exist. Stoicism is not about becoming emotionless. Marcus Aurelius felt grief. He felt exhaustion. He faced fear and uncertainty just like everyone else. The difference was that he refused to let those emotions become his master. He understood that emotions are natural, but our response to them is a choice. This lesson becomes even more powerful in today's world. We live in an age of constant comparison. Every day, social media encourages us to measure our lives against carefully edited images of other people's success. News headlines fill us with anxiety about events far beyond our influence. Algorithms compete for our attention, pulling our minds in every direction. Without realizing it, we begin surrendering control of our inner world. Marcus Aurelius reminds us to take it back. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is the best response I can choose right now?" That single question changes everything. It shifts your focus away from circumstances and toward character, away from blame and toward responsibility, away from helplessness and toward action. Imagine two people losing the same job. One spends months consumed by bitterness, blaming everyone around them. The other feels the same disappointment, but chooses to update their skills, apply for new opportunities, and keep moving forward. Neither person controlled losing the job, but each controlled what happened next. That is where freedom begins. Not in controlling life, but in controlling yourself. Marcus Aurelius believed that every difficult moment offers us a choice. Will this experience make us weaker, or will it make us wiser? Because every minute spent fighting reality is a minute stolen from building a better future. Marcus Aurelius understood that true freedom does not come from having unlimited power over the world. It comes from refusing to let the world have unlimited power over you. And that simple shift in perspective may be one of the most liberating ideas ever written. Lesson 2. Accept hardship. No one wakes up hoping for a difficult day. We hope our plans work out. We hope people treat us fairly. We hope life moves in the direction we imagined. But sooner or later, reality reminds us that hope alone cannot prevent hardship. A relationship ends, a dream falls apart, a loved one becomes ill, a career takes an unexpected turn. Failure arrives without warning. The question is not whether hardship will come. The question is how we will respond when it does. Marcus Aurelius knew this better than most. As Emperor of Rome, he lived through years of devastating war. A deadly plague swept across the empire, taking countless lives. Political betrayals tested his trust. Personal loss touched his own family. There were moments when it must have seemed that every new day brought another crisis. Yet, in the middle of all this, he wrote something extraordinary. He reminded himself that obstacles are not interruptions to life. They are part of life. This idea stands in sharp contrast to the way many of us think today. We often believe that happiness begins when our problems finally disappear. When I get the promotion, I'll be happy. Instead, ask, what is this experience trying to teach me? That simple shift transforms suffering into a teacher. Think about a blacksmith forging a sword. The metal is heated until it glows. Then it is struck again and again with a hammer. Without the fire and the blows, the steel never becomes strong enough to serve its purpose. Human character is shaped in much the same way. Comfort rarely teaches resilience. Failure does, loss does, responsibility does, adversity does. The strongest people are not those who avoided hardship. They are the ones who learned from it. This does not mean enjoying pain or pretending suffering is pleasant. Marcus Aurelius never suggested that. Grief is real. Disappointment is real. Fear is real. But he believed these experiences could refine us instead of destroying us. Everything depends on how we choose to meet them. Imagine two trees growing side by side. One grows in a protected greenhouse, shielded from every wind. The other grows on a rocky hillside, bending through storms year after year. Which tree develops deeper roots? Which tree is better prepared when the strongest winds arrive? The answer is obvious. Strength is often born where life is most difficult. Modern life gives us countless opportunities to practice this lesson. A rejected job application can become motivation to improve. A failed business can become the foundation of future success. A painful mistake can become a source of wisdom that prevents even greater mistakes later. Many of the people we admire most did not succeed because life was easy. They succeeded because they refused to let hardship define them. Marcus Aurelius believed that every obstacle contains two possibilities. It can become a wall that stops you, or it can become a staircase that helps you grow. The choice is rarely made by circumstances. It is made by your attitude. When we stop asking for an easier life and begin asking to become stronger, something remarkable happens. Our perspective changes. Challenges become opportunities to practice patience. Failure becomes an opportunity to learn. Loss reminds us to appreciate what remains. Every difficult moment becomes a chance to develop courage, wisdom, and resilience. This is why Stoicism has endured for centuries. It does not promise a life without pain. It offers something far more realistic: the ability to face pain without surrendering to it. Marcus Aurelius understood the truth that many people spend their entire lives avoiding. You cannot always choose the road you walk, but you can choose the person you become while walking it. And sometimes, the hardest roads lead to the strongest character. Lesson 3. Stop seeking approval. Imagine posting something online that you're proud of. For a few minutes, everything feels fine. Then you begin checking the likes, the comments, the views. One negative opinion suddenly outweighs 100 positive ones. Your mood changes, not because your work has changed, but because someone else's opinion has. This is one of the oldest traps in human history. Long before social media, long before the internet, people worried about what others thought of them. Marcus Aurelius understood this struggle well. As Emperor of Rome, he lived under constant scrutiny. Every decision he made was judged. Every success was praised by some and criticized by others. No matter what he did, someone would approve and someone else would disapprove. He eventually realized something liberating. You cannot build a peaceful life on the unstable foundation of other people's opinions. Why? Because opinions constantly change. The crowd that celebrates you today may criticize you tomorrow. Someone who misunderstands your intentions may judge your character without ever knowing your story. If your happiness depends on everyone's approval, your happiness will never truly belong to you. Marcus reminded himself that reputation is not the same as character. Reputation exists in the minds of other people. Character exists in your own actions. One is beyond your control. The other is entirely within it. Think about how much energy we spend trying to impress others. We buy things we don't need. We compare ourselves to strangers. We hide our mistakes. We avoid taking risks because we're afraid of looking foolish. Slowly, without realizing it, we begin living for an audience instead of living according to our values. Marcus Aurelius believed this was a quiet form of slavery. Because when other people's approval becomes your master, you lose the freedom to be yourself. This doesn't mean ignoring all advice or refusing constructive criticism. Wise people listen, they learn, they improve, but they do not allow every opinion to determine their worth. There is an important difference between learning from others and living for others. Imagine a ship crossing the ocean. The captain listens to weather reports, watches the waves, and studies the stars. But if he tried to steer the ship according to every voice shouting from the shore, he would never reach his destination. Life works the same way. Listen to wisdom. Ignore noise. Stay focused on your course. Today's world makes this lesson more important than ever. Social media encourages constant comparison. Success is measured by followers. Beauty is measured by filters. Value is measured by numbers on a screen. It's easy to forget that none of these things determine who you are. Marcus Aurelius would remind us that the only opinion deserving your deepest respect is the quiet voice of your own conscience. At the end of each day, ask yourself simple questions. Did I act with honesty? Did I treat people fairly? Did I do my best? If the answer is yes, then you've succeeded, even if no one applauds. History is filled with people who were misunderstood during their lifetime. Some of the greatest artists, scientists, writers, and thinkers faced criticism, rejection, and ridicule before their ideas were appreciated. If they had abandoned their convictions simply to gain approval, the world would have lost many of its greatest achievements. Marcus Aurelius understood that living with integrity sometimes means standing alone. The goal is not to be admired by everyone. The goal is to become someone you can genuinely respect.
Lesson 4. Time is limited. There is one thing every person on earth receives in equal measure. Not wealth, not intelligence, not opportunity. Time. Every morning we wake up with a new day, and every evening, one day of our life is gone forever. Most of us live as though there will always be another tomorrow, another chance to say the words we've been postponing, another opportunity to chase the dream we've been delaying, another year to become the person we hope to be. But Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of a truth that many people try to avoid. Life is short. Not because he was pessimistic, but because remembering death taught him how to truly live. As emperor, Marcus witnessed death more often than most people ever will. He saw soldiers fall on the battlefield. He watched disease spread across the empire. He buried people he loved. He understood that no amount of power, wealth, or status could protect anyone from the passage of time. Even the ruler of the greatest empire in the world could not bargain for one extra day. Instead of fearing this reality, Marcus embraced it. He believed that remembering our mortality gives every moment greater meaning. Imagine walking through a beautiful garden that blooms for only one day each year. Would you rush through it without looking? Or would you slow down, appreciating every flower because you know it won't last? Life is much the same. Its value comes not from lasting forever, but from being limited. Yet how often do we spend our days distracted? We tell ourselves we'll start exercising next month. We'll learn that new skill next year. We'll call our parents when we're less busy. We'll spend more time with our children after work calms down. We'll pursue our passion. Someday. One of the most dangerous words in the human vocabulary. Because someday quietly becomes never. Marcus Aurelius urged himself never to waste the present while dreaming endlessly about the future. He understood that the past cannot be changed. The future cannot be guaranteed. The present is all we truly possess. This doesn't mean ignoring tomorrow. It means refusing to sacrifice today while waiting for a perfect future that may never arrive. Think of an hourglass. Every grain of sand that falls can never be returned to the top. Our lives move in the same direction. Every conversation, every sunrise, every opportunity. Once it passes, it belongs to memory. This realization can seem frightening, but Marcus Aurelius saw it as deeply freeing. If life is limited, then every moment becomes precious. Small acts of kindness matter. Time with loved ones matters. Learning matters. Doing meaningful work matters. Holding grudges suddenly seems like a terrible waste of the little time we have. How many hours have we lost replaying old arguments? How many days have we sacrificed worrying about things that never happened? How many years have slipped away while waiting for the right moment to begin living? Marcus would gently remind us that the right moment is almost always now. This lesson feels especially relevant in the modern world. Our attention is constantly divided. Notifications interrupt conversations. Endless scrolling consumes entire evenings. we postpone our real lives for another video, another post, another distraction. Without noticing, the days become months, the months become years, and one day we wonder where all the time went. Marcus Aurelius challenges us to live differently.
Wake up with purpose. Treat each day as a gift rather than a guarantee. Say the kind words today. Begin the project today. Forgive today. Learn today. Live today. Because none of us knows how many tomorrows remain. This isn't a message of despair. It's a message of urgency. Not the urgency of panic, but the urgency of gratitude. When we remember that time is limited, we stop taking ordinary moments for granted. A meal shared with family becomes more meaningful. A walk beneath the evening sky becomes more beautiful. A quiet conversation with a friend becomes more valuable. The awareness of life's limits teaches us to appreciate life's gifts. Marcus Aurelius believed that a meaningful life is not measured by how many years we are given. It is measured by how wisely we use the years we have. One day, every title will be forgotten. Every possession will belong to someone else. Every achievement will become part of history. But the way we lived, the kindness we showed, the courage we displayed, the character we built, those are the things that truly define a life. Time is the only treasure that can never be earned back. Spend it carefully. Spend it intentionally. And above all, don't wait for another life to begin. This one is already happening.
Lesson 4. Time is limited. There is one thing every person on earth receives in equal measure. Not wealth, not intelligence, not opportunity. Time. Every morning we wake up with a new day, and every evening, one day of our life is gone forever. Most of us live as though there will always be another tomorrow, another chance to say the words we've been postponing, another opportunity to chase the dream we've been delaying, another year to become the person we hope to be. But Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of a truth that many people try to avoid. Life is short. Not because he was pessimistic, but because remembering death taught him how to truly live. As emperor, Marcus witnessed death more often than most people ever will. He saw soldiers fall on the battlefield. He watched disease spread across the empire. He buried people he loved. He understood that no amount of power, wealth, or status could protect anyone from the passage of time. Even the ruler of the greatest empire in the world could not bargain for one extra day. Instead of fearing this reality, Marcus embraced it. He believed that remembering our mortality gives every moment greater meaning. Imagine walking through a beautiful garden that blooms for only one day each year. Would you rush through it without looking? Or would you slow down, appreciating every flower because you know it won't last? Life is much the same. Its value comes not from lasting forever, but from being limited. Yet how often do we spend our days distracted? We tell ourselves we'll start exercising next month. We'll learn that new skill next year. We'll call our parents when we're less busy. We'll spend more time with our children after work calms down. We'll pursue our passion. Someday. One of the most dangerous words in the human vocabulary. Because someday quietly becomes never. Marcus Aurelius urged himself never to waste the present while dreaming endlessly about the future. He understood that the past cannot be changed. The future cannot be guaranteed. The present is all we truly possess. This doesn't mean ignoring tomorrow. It means refusing to sacrifice today while waiting for a perfect future that may never arrive. Think of an hourglass. Every grain of sand that falls can never be returned to the top. Our lives move in the same direction. Every conversation, every sunrise, every opportunity. Once it passes,
It belongs to memory. This realization can seem frightening, but Marcus Aurelius saw it as deeply freeing. If life is limited, then every moment becomes precious. Small acts of kindness matter. Time with loved ones matters. Learning matters. Doing meaningful work matters. Holding grudges suddenly seems like a terrible waste of the little time we have. How many hours have we lost replaying old arguments? How many days have we sacrificed worrying about things that never happened?
How many years have slipped away while waiting for the right moment to begin living? Marcus would gently remind us that the right moment is almost always now. This lesson feels especially relevant in the modern world. Our attention is constantly divided. Notifications interrupt conversations. Endless scrolling consumes entire evenings. We postpone our real lives for another video, another post, another distraction. Without noticing, the days become months, the months become years, and one day we wonder where all the time went. Marcus Aurelius challenges us to live differently. Wake up with purpose. Treat each day as a gift rather than a guarantee. Say the kind words today. Begin the project today. Forgive today. Learn today. Live today. Because none of us knows how many tomorrows remain. This isn't a message of despair. It's a message of urgency. Not the urgency of panic, but the urgency of gratitude. When we remember that time is limited, we stop taking ordinary moments for granted. A meal shared with family becomes more meaningful. A walk beneath the evening sky becomes more beautiful. A quiet conversation with a friend becomes more valuable. The character we build, those are the things that truly define a life. Time is the only treasure that can never be earned back. Spend it carefully. Spend it intentionally. And above all, don't wait for another life to begin. This one is already happening. The awareness of life's limits teaches us to appreciate life's gifts. Marcus Aurelius believed that a meaningful life is not measured by how many years we are given. It is measured by how wisely we use the years we have. One day, every title will be forgotten. Every possession will belong to someone else. Every achievement will become part of history. But the way we lived, the kindness we showed, the courage we displayed. Lesson 5. Master your emotions. Imagine someone insults you in front of a room full of people. For a brief moment, time seems to stop. Your heart begins to race. Your mind immediately searches for the perfect response. In just a few seconds, anger takes control. Later that evening, the conversation is over. The other person has moved on. But you haven't. You replay the moment again and again. You imagine better arguments. You relive the embarrassment. Hours later, the event is still controlling your thoughts. Marcus Aurelius would ask a simple question. Who is truly in control? The person who insulted you, or your own mind? One of the greatest misunderstandings about Stoicism is the belief that Stoics never felt emotion. Nothing could be further from the truth. Marcus Aurelius experienced grief. He experienced fear. He experienced frustration, disappointment, and exhaustion. He was human. What made him different was not the absence of emotion. It was the refusal to let emotion become the ruler of his life. He understood that emotions often arrive without our permission. Anger appears. Fear appears. Sadness appears. But while we cannot always choose our first emotional reaction, we can choose what happens next. That choice is where freedom lives. Think of your emotions like the weather. Some days the sky is bright and clear. Other days, storms roll in without warning. You cannot command the clouds to disappear,
but you can decide whether to build your home on solid ground or let the storm carry you away. Marcus believed that wisdom begins with creating a small space between what happens to us and how we respond. In that space lies self-control. Imagine receiving a harsh email from your manager. Your first instinct is to fire back an angry reply. Instead, you close your laptop. You take a walk. You allow your emotions to settle. When you return an hour later, your response is calmer, wiser, and more productive. The situation hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has. This is emotional mastery, not suppressing emotion, directing it. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that people act according to what they believe is right, even when they are mistaken. Someone who lies may believe it protects them. Someone who insults others may be carrying pain they don't know how to express. Someone who behaves selfishly may never have learned compassion. Understanding this doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it makes forgiveness easier than hatred. After all, hatred usually harms the person carrying it more than the person receiving it. Modern psychology has reached a similar conclusion. Our interpretation of an event often influences our emotional experience more than the event itself. Two people can face the exact same challenge. One sees only disaster. The other sees an opportunity to grow. The circumstances are identical. Their mindset is not. Marcus Aurelius understood this centuries before modern science gave it a name. He knew that perspective shapes experience. This lesson becomes increasingly important in today's world. Every day, we are exposed to alarming headlines, endless opinions, and constant digital distractions. Outrage spreads faster than understanding. Fear travels faster than reason. If we react impulsively to everything we see, hear, or read, we surrender control of our own minds. Marcus encourages a different approach. Pause before reacting. Question your assumptions. Ask yourself, is this within my control? Am I seeing this clearly? What response reflects the person I want to become? These questions interrupt the cycle of automatic emotion. They replace impulse with intention. Consider a skilled archer. Before releasing the arrow, they steady their breathing. They focus. They remain calm despite the pressure. If they panic, they miss the target. Our decisions work the same way. The calmer the mind, the clearer the aim. This doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. Compassion still matters. Joy still matters. Love still matters. Stoicism is not about feeling less. It is about allowing your highest values, not your strongest emotions, to guide your actions. Marcus Aurelius believed that every day offered another opportunity to practice this discipline. Some days you would succeed. Other days you would fail. What mattered was returning to the practice, again and again. Because mastering your emotions is not something you achieve once. It is something you practice for a lifetime. When anger no longer controls your words, when fear no longer controls your choices, when anxiety no longer steals the present moment, you discover a quiet strength that no circumstance can easily take away. That strength is not found in the world around you. It is built within you. And once it is built, it becomes one of the greatest sources of freedom a human being can possess. Lesson 6. Live with virtue. Imagine two people reaching the end of their lives. The first spent decades chasing wealth, status, and admiration. The second dedicated their life to honesty, kindness, courage, and service to others. Both leave the world with empty hands. Neither takes their money, neither keeps their titles, neither carries their possessions. What remains is something far more important, the kind of person they chose to become. For Marcus Aurelius, This was the true measure of a successful life, not what you owned.
Not what people said about you, but your character. The Stoics used a single word to describe this ideal: virtue. Today, the word may sound old-fashioned, but Marcus Aurelius gave it a practical meaning. To live with virtue meant striving to be wise when making decisions, courageous when facing fear, just when dealing with others, self-disciplined when tempted by comfort or pleasure. These weren't qualities reserved for philosophers. They were habits that could be practiced by anyone, every single day. Marcus believed that every morning, life quietly asks us a question. What kind of person will you be today? Not how much money will you earn.
Not how many people will admire you, but will you act with integrity? Integrity means doing the right thing even when no one is watching. Imagine finding a wallet full of cash on an empty street. No cameras, no witnesses, no chance of being caught. Your decision in that moment reveals far more about your character than your reputation ever could. Character is who you are when applause disappears. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this. As emperor, he possessed immense authority. He could have abused his power for personal gain. History is filled with rulers who did exactly that. Yet Marcus repeatedly wrote that power should be used to serve others, not yourself. To him, leadership was a responsibility, not a reward. This lesson extends far beyond politics. Whether you lead a country, a company, a classroom, or a family, true leadership begins with example. People may listen to your words, but they remember your actions. Think of a lighthouse standing on a rocky coastline. It does not shout at ships. It does not chase them across the sea. It simply stands firm, shining steadily through the darkness. Its strength comes from consistency. Marcus believed that a virtuous person should live in much the same way, not seeking attention, not demanding recognition, simply choosing what is right again and again. In today's world, success is often measured by numbers, followers, income, awards, expensive possessions. But these things can disappear overnight. A business can fail, fame can fade, fortunes can be lost. If your identity depends entirely on external success, your peace will always be fragile. Marcus Aurelius encourages us to build our lives on something that cannot be taken away: your honesty, your compassion, your courage, your willingness to help others. These qualities belong to you, regardless of your circumstances. Imagine two doctors. One sees patients only for money. The other genuinely wants to relieve suffering. Both may perform the same job, but only one is guided by virtue. Or imagine two teachers. One teaches because it pays the bills. The other teaches because they believe education can change lives. The actions may appear similar. The purpose is entirely different. Marcus believed that purpose gives ordinary work extraordinary meaning. Even the smallest act, when done with sincerity and integrity, becomes valuable. Holding the door open for a stranger, keeping a promise, admitting a mistake, speaking honestly when lying would be easier. These quiet moments shape our character far more than grand achievements. Virtue is not built in extraordinary moments alone. It is built through ordinary choices, repeated consistently over time. Marcus also understood that no one is perfect. There would be days when he lost his patience, days when he became frustrated, days when he fell short of his own ideals. But instead of giving up, he returned to the same commitment, to become just a little better than he was yesterday. Perhaps that is one of the most encouraging lessons in meditations. Perfection is not the goal. Progress is. Each day offers another chance to practice wisdom instead of impulse, kindness instead of cruelty, humility instead of arrogance, courage instead of fear. Little by little, those choices shape the person we become. At the end of life, very few people wish they had earned one more promotion or bought one more expensive possession. Many wish they had loved more deeply, lived more honestly, forgiven more quickly, served others more generously. Marcus Aurelius understood this long before the modern world. He believed that a meaningful life is not measured by what you accumulate, it is measured by what you contribute. Because in the end, people rarely remember us for what we owned. They remember how we made them feel. They remember our integrity, our compassion, our courage. That is the legacy of virtue. And unlike wealth or fame, it never goes out of style.
Lesson 7. Focus on the present. Imagine holding a glass of water. For a few seconds, it feels effortless. Hold it for an hour, and your arm begins to ache. Hold it all day, and the pain becomes unbearable. The weight of the glass never changes, but the longer you carry it, the heavier it feels. Our worries work in much the same way. Many of us spend our days carrying the weight of yesterday's mistakes and tomorrow's uncertainties. We replay conversations we cannot change. We imagine disasters that may never happen. We become trapped between a past that no longer exists and a future that has not yet arrived. Meanwhile, the present moment quietly slips away. Marcus Aurelius believed this was one of the greatest sources of unnecessary suffering. Again and again, he reminded himself to return to the only moment he truly possessed, the present. Think about how much of life we miss because our minds are somewhere else. We eat without tasting our food. We walk without noticing the sky above us. We spend time with the people we love while staring at a screen. Our bodies remain in the present. Our minds do not. Marcus understood that peace cannot be found in memories or predictions. It can only be found in the moment we are living right now. This doesn't mean ignoring the future. Planning is important. Learning from the past is important. But there is a difference between preparing for tomorrow and becoming imprisoned by it. Imagine an archer aiming at a target. The archer cannot control the wind, cannot control the distance, cannot even guarantee where the arrow will land after it leaves the bow. The only thing fully within the archer's control is this moment. Their posture, their breathing, their focus, their release. Life works the same way. We control our effort, not the outcome. Marcus Aurelius returned to this idea constantly because he knew how easily the mind wanders. As emperor, he could have spent every waking hour worrying about future wars, political conspiracies, or economic crises. Instead, he reminded himself to deal faithfully with the task directly in front of him. One decision at a time, one conversation at a time, one day at a time. There is quiet wisdom in this approach. Most problems become overwhelming only when we imagine carrying them forever. A student doesn't fear today's lesson. They fear years of study. An entrepreneur doesn't fear today's work. They fear the uncertainty of the entire journey. Someone trying to improve their health doesn't fear today's workout. They fear the months ahead. Marcus would gently bring us back to a simpler question. What needs my attention right now? Not next year, not next month, right now. Because life is always lived one moment at a time. Modern life constantly pulls us away from this truth. Our phones buzz with notifications. Our minds jump from one headline to another. We scroll endlessly, always searching for what comes next. Rarely do we pause long enough to fully experience what is already here. Yet some of the richest moments in life ask for nothing more than our presence.
watching the sunrise, sharing dinner with family, listening carefully to a friend, reading a good book, taking a quiet walk without rushing toward the next task. These ordinary moments often become our most treasured memories, not because they were extraordinary, but because we were fully present for them. Marcus Aurelius believed that each day should be approached as if it were a complete life in itself.
Do today's work well. Treat today's people with kindness. Face today's challenges with courage. Leave tomorrow until it arrives. There is remarkable freedom in this mindset. Anxiety loses much of its power when we stop feeding it with endless predictions. Regret loses its grip when we stop reliving what cannot be changed. The present becomes enough. This lesson does not ask us to ignore our responsibilities. It asks us to stop carrying burdens that do not belong to today. When your mind begins racing toward an uncertain future, gently return to this moment. Take the next step. Have the next conversation. Solve the next problem. Do the same again. That is how meaningful lives are built. Not all at once, but one intentional moment after another. Marcus Aurelius understood that the present is not simply another point in time. It is the only place where life truly happens. And those who learn to live fully in the present discover a peace that no past regret or future fear can easily disturb. Lesson 8. Turn obstacles into opportunities. Imagine a river flowing steadily toward the sea. Suddenly, a massive boulder blocks its path. The river does not argue with the rock. It does not complain that life is unfair. It does not turn back in defeat. Instead, it does something remarkable. It flows around the obstacle. Sometimes it carves a new path. Sometimes, over many years, it slowly wears the stone away. The obstacle does not stop the river. It changes the way the river moves. Marcus Aurelius believed we should face life's obstacles in the same way. Most of us see obstacles as signs that we should quit. A rejection letter, a failed business, a painful breakup, a serious mistake. We think, this wasn't supposed to happen. But Marcus asked a different question. What can this obstacle teach me? This simple shift transforms the way we experience difficulty. Instead of seeing challenges as enemies, we begin to see them as opportunities to grow. One of the central ideas in meditations is that the mind has the power to transform adversity into strength. An obstacle can test your patience. It can deepen your courage. It can sharpen your wisdom. It can reveal strengths you never knew you possessed. In other words, the obstacle is not merely standing in your way. It becomes part of your way forward. History offers countless examples of this truth. Many of the world's greatest inventors experienced repeated failure before achieving success. Authors had manuscripts rejected dozens of times. Athletes lost championships before becoming legends. Scientists spent years proving ideas that others dismissed. If every obstacle had convinced them to stop, the world would be very different today. Marcus Aurelius understood that progress is rarely a straight line. The road to anything worthwhile is filled with setbacks, uncertainty, and disappointment. The question is not whether obstacles will appear. The question is whether you will allow them to define your future. Imagine climbing a mountain. Every steep section makes your legs stronger. Every difficult step improves your balance. If the path were completely flat, you would never develop the strength needed to reach the summit. The difficulty is not separate from the journey. It is the journey. This lesson applies to every part of life. A difficult conversation teaches honesty. A demanding project develops discipline. A painful loss
deepens compassion. Even failure can become one of life's greatest teachers, if we are willing to learn from it. Consider a seed buried beneath the soil. At first glance, it seems trapped in darkness. But that very pressure and darkness create the conditions for growth. Without them, the seed would never become a tree. Sometimes life buries us, not to destroy us, but to prepare us for something greater. Of course, this perspective is not easy. When hardship arrives, our first reaction is often frustration. We ask, why me? Marcus gently encourages us to replace that question with another. What is this moment asking of me? Perhaps it asks for patience. Perhaps it asks for courage. Perhaps it asks for humility. Perhaps it asks for perseverance. Every obstacle becomes an invitation to practice a virtue. Modern life constantly presents these opportunities. A delayed flight becomes a chance to practice patience. A disagreement becomes a chance to practice understanding. A setback at work becomes a chance to improve your skills. Even small inconveniences become exercises in self-control. This does not mean pretending that every obstacle is pleasant. Some hardships leave deep scars. Some losses cannot be replaced. Marcus Aurelius knew this from personal experience. He did not deny suffering. He simply refused to let suffering have the final word. He believed that while circumstances may limit our options, they never eliminate our ability to choose our response. And sometimes, that response becomes the beginning of a completely new path. Many people look back on the hardest periods of their lives and realize those moments shaped them more than their greatest successes ever did. The challenge they once wished to avoid became the experience that taught them resilience. The failure they once feared became the reason they succeeded later. The obstacle became the path. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that life will never be free of difficulties, but every difficulty carries a hidden question. Will this break your spirit or build your character? The answer is not found in the obstacle itself. It is found in the person you choose to become because of it. When you begin to see obstacles not as barriers, but as opportunities for growth, failure loses its power to define you. Every setback becomes a lesson. Every challenge becomes training. Every obstacle becomes another step on the journey toward wisdom. And that may be one of the greatest gifts meditations has to offer. Lesson 9. The power of discipline. Every morning, an invisible battle begins. The alarm rings. A voice inside your mind whispers, "Stay in bed." Another voice says, "Get up." You know what you should do, but you don't always feel like doing it. This quiet conflict is one of the oldest struggles in human history. Marcus Aurelius faced it too. Despite ruling the greatest empire of his time, he often reminded himself that the hardest person to lead was not an army, it was himself. One morning, he wrote a powerful reminder that has inspired people for centuries. When you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, "I have to go to work," as a human being. He wasn't talking only about a job. He meant something much deeper. Every human being has a purpose. Every day offers an opportunity to contribute, to learn, to help others, and to become a little better than the day before. Waiting until you feel motivated is unreliable. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline remains. Think of a farmer planting seeds. The farmer doesn't work only on sunny days. He doesn't stop because he isn't in the mood. He plants, waters, and cares for the fields consistently. Months later, the harvest arrives. Success in life works the same way. The results we admire are usually built on small actions repeated over and over again. A healthy body isn't created by one workout. A successful career isn't built in 1 week. A meaningful relationship isn't strengthened by one conversation. Great things grow from consistent effort. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He believed that excellence is not an accident. It is a habit. Every decision you make becomes a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. When you choose honesty over convenience, you strengthen integrity.
Imagine a sculptor standing before a block of marble. Every strike of the chisel removes something unnecessary. Slowly, a masterpiece begins to emerge. Discipline works in much the same way. Each act of self-control removes a little laziness, a little fear, a little selfishness. Little by little, it reveals the person hidden beneath. This process is rarely exciting. Most of the time, discipline looks ordinary. Reading one chapter instead of watching another hour of television. Taking a walk when you feel like staying inside. Keeping a promise, even when it's inconvenient. Choosing kindness during an argument. Saving money instead of spending it impulsively. These quiet decisions rarely attract attention, but they quietly shape your future. Marcus also knew that discipline is not about punishing yourself. It is about respecting yourself. When you keep the promises you make to yourself, confidence grows. Not because life becomes easier, but because you begin trusting your own actions. Imagine building a bridge. One plank alone cannot carry much weight, but thousands of carefully placed planks create something strong enough to support countless travelers. Our daily habits work the same way. Each good habit seems insignificant by itself. Together, they become the foundation of an extraordinary life. There will be days when you fail, days when you lose focus, days when you choose comfort instead of growth. Marcus Aurelius would not tell you to quit. He would tell you to begin again. Without self-hatred, without excuses. Simply begin again. That may be the most overlooked part of discipline. Consistency does not require perfection. It requires persistence. The strongest people are not those who never stumble. They are the ones who continue walking after they do. In the end, discipline offers something that comfort never can. Freedom. The freedom to act according to your values, rather than your impulses. The freedom to build the future you truly want, instead of drifting wherever your emotions lead. Marcus Aurelius believed that mastering yourself is the highest form of victory, because the person who can govern their own mind can face almost any challenge life presents. Empires may rise and fall. Fortunes may be gained and lost. But the discipline you build within yourself becomes a strength that no one can easily take away. Lesson 10. Preparing for death without fear. Few words make people as uncomfortable as one simple word: death. We avoid talking about it. We push it to the back of our minds. We live as though it belongs only to other people. Yet Marcus Aurelius believed that avoiding death does not make life better. It makes life smaller. At first, this idea may sound strange. Why would a philosopher spend so much time thinking about death? Wasn't that depressing? Marcus would answer with a simple truth. The purpose of remembering death is not to become afraid. It exposes what deserves our attention. Marcus Aurelius encouraged himself to live each day in a way that required no regret, not because he expected perfection, but because he wanted to meet the end of life with peace rather than remorse. Imagine reading the final page of a beautiful novel. You may feel sadness that the story is ending, but you are grateful that you had the chance to experience it. Marcus believed we should think about life in the same way, not asking for an endless story. We imagine there will always be another opportunity, but Marcus gently reminds us that tomorrow is a hope, not a promise.
This realization is not meant to create panic. It is meant to create clarity. If today were your final day, would you spend it arguing over small misunderstandings? Would you waste hours comparing yourself to strangers? Would you allow fear to stop you from pursuing what truly matters? Probably not. The awareness of death has a remarkable way of revealing what is truly important. It strips away the trivial. It exposes what deserves our attention. Marcus Aurelius encouraged himself to live each day in a way that required no regret, not because he expected perfection, but because he wanted to meet the end of life with peace rather than remorse. Imagine reading the final page of a beautiful novel. You may feel sadness that the story is ending, but you are grateful that you had the chance to experience it. Marcus believed we should think about life in the same way, not asking for an endless story, but striving to make the story meaningful. Modern culture often encourages us to chase immortality through success, fame, or achievement. We hope that if enough people remember our names, some part of us will live forever. Marcus Aurelius saw things differently. He reminded himself that even the greatest emperors would one day be forgotten by most of the world. Fame fades. Empires collapse. Generations pass. What truly matters is not how long people remember your name. It is how well you lived while you were here. Did you act with kindness? Did you show courage? Did you help others? Did you remain faithful to your values? These are the questions that outlast titles and trophies. This lesson is not about preparing for death only at the end of life. It is about preparing every single day, living so honestly that you have nothing essential left unsaid, living so gratefully that ordinary moments become extraordinary gifts, living so courageously that fear no longer decides your future. Paradoxically, those who accept death often become the people who appreciate life the most. They notice the sunrise. They treasure conversations. They laugh more freely. They forgive more quickly. They stop waiting for the perfect time and begin living today. Marcus Aurelius understood that death is not the enemy. A wasted life is. The greatest tragedy is not that life ends. The greatest tragedy is reaching the end without ever truly living. So let the certainty of death become a reminder, not of despair, but of purpose. Speak the kind words. Take the meaningful risk. Spend time with the people you love. Pursue what is worthy. Become the person you hope to be. Not someday, today. Because every sunrise is a gift. Every breath is an opportunity. And every day is another chance to live a life that, when the final chapter arrives, leaves you able to close the book with gratitude rather than regret.